The landlord's rule was clear: no babies allowed in his compound. Tenants whispered, mothers protested, but none knew the reason, until one night, the truth broke free. But tell me, when an elder sets a rule that seems harsh, is it always wickedness, or could it be a warning born from pain? The compound itself was full of life. Students hurried in and out with their books, traders returned at dusk with baskets of unsold goods, and workers left early each morning with tired but hopeful faces. The place never lacked laughter, arguments, or the ordinary noise of life. It was the kind of compound where neighbors cooked outside, shared salt and firewood, and children of different families played together except there were no babies. Not one cry of an infant, not one mother cradling a newborn. And everyone knew why. The landlord, a man whose beard had grown gray with age and whose voice carried weight like a town crier's bell, made one rule from the beginning: no babies allowed. Tenants signed their agreements, and he repeated it to their faces. He was respected, even feared, for he never bent that rule. Some said it was because he hated the sound of children crying. Others whispered darker things, that a curse followed babies in his house, and that he carried a secret from long ago. But whatever the reason, no tenant dared to test him, until one day, someone did. It happened when a young couple arrived from another town. Their faces carried the glow of new parents, though they tried to hide it. In the quiet of night, neighbors soon discovered the truth: they had brought a newborn into the compound. They wrapped the baby in thick cloth, hushed its cries, and pretended nothing was different. To everyone else, they said they had come alone. But mothers in the compound know the sound of a child, even if it is just a soft whimper. At first, it was small things. A faint cry heard at night, though when asked, the couple smiled and shook their heads. Chickens in the yard began flapping wildly at midnight, as if chasing shadows only they could see. Lamps that once burned steady now flickered for no reason, leaving corners of the compound in uneasy half-light. Goats tied by the fence pulled at their ropes, restless and afraid. Then came the night when the baby's cry could no longer be hidden. It rose, sharp and piercing, cutting through the stillness of the compound. Doors opened, neighbors stirred, hearts pounded. And before long, the sound reached ears it was never meant to reach. At that very hour, footsteps echoed in the courtyard, heavy and slow. The landlord's knock thundered on their door. The young couple braced themselves for the landlord's fury. But when the door creaked open, they did not find anger in his eyes, they found fear. His hands trembled, his lips quivered, and for the first time, the tenants saw not a strict master, but a man haunted by something deeper. He stepped inside without a word, his eyes darting around as though watching shadows that no one else could see. The baby whimpered in its mother's arms, and the landlord flinched, as though the sound cut straight into his chest. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, heavy, and cracked with years of silence. "You do not understand," he said. "This is not about rules, it is about survival." The room grew still as he revealed the truth he had carried alone for decades. Many years ago, long before the compound stood, the land was used for rituals that no child should ever be near. A forbidden sacrifice had been carried out here, and though the people who performed it were long gone, the stain they left behind remained. He confessed that he had seen it with his own eyes. Babies born or brought into that compound never lived to see their first birthday. Some grew weak without cause. Others cried endlessly at night until their voices went silent forever. No doctor could explain it. No healer could cure it. One by one, families left, broken and grieving, until only he remained. The old man's face tightened as he whispered, "I built this compound to give life back to the land, to drown its evil in laughter and work. But children, babies, they are too pure, too unguarded. The shadows that linger here, they claim them first." As his words settled in the room, the couple clutched their child tighter, and the other tenants who had gathered at the doorway felt their stomachs turn. What had been dismissed as superstition now rang with the weight of lived truth. The landlord's final words pierced the silence. "It is not hatred that keeps me from welcoming babies here, it is fear. Fear of losing them to something none of us can see. The couple looked at each other, their eyes defiant. They had heard enough stories of curses and rituals, and they refused to believe that the life of their child was already doomed. But the murmurs of the tenants grew louder, and before the night ended, word had spread across the compound. Elders were called to settle the matter. They came with their walking sticks and sacred words, men who carried wisdom like shields. Under the moonlight, the prayers began. Some recited chants passed down for generations, others lifted songs of deliverance. The couple stood with their child at the center, while the landlord hovered near the edge, wringing his hands. He begged them to stop, his voice breaking, but the people pressed on. And then it started. The baby's soft cry rose suddenly into a wail so sharp, it silenced the crowd. From the ground itself came a sound faint, but chilling like distant voices echoing beneath their feet. A cold wind cut through the courtyard though the night had been still moments before. One elder struck the earth with his staff and ordered the young men to dig where the sound was loudest. Their hands tore through soil that had long been untouched, until they unearthed something no one had expected. A clay pot, sealed with blackened rope and smeared with dried blood. Around it, charms lay buried cowrie shells, strange carvings, pieces of cloth hardened by time. The air grew heavy, and even the bravest among them stepped back. The baby's cries grew louder still, as though answering the secrets being uncovered. And in that moment, the crowd saw with their own eyes what the landlord had tried to bury with silence. The compound stood frozen, each heart pounding with the same realization: this was no superstition, no tale to frighten children. The land truly carried a curse, and it had only been waiting for a child to awaken it. The pot began to shake, as though something inside fought to break free. With one final strike, it cracked and a dark mist rushed upward, scattering into the air like 1,000 tiny shadows. The baby shrieked once more, then suddenly went quiet, resting peacefully against the mother's chest. The crowd gasped. The child had survived. But the message was clear: the danger was real, and the curse had not been fully broken. Whispers spread like fire. Some turned toward the landlord, their faces twisted with anger. "Why did you keep this from us?" they demanded. "How many lives could have been spared if you had spoken the truth long ago?" The landlord's knees buckled beneath him. He raised his trembling hands and wept. "I was only a boy when it began," he confessed. "I thought by keeping children away, I could protect you all. I carried this burden alone, because I feared no one would believe me." But the people did not soften. Too much had been uncovered. The elders declared that the couple could no longer stay in the compound. Their baby, though spared tonight, had awakened forces that would not rest. For the safety of all, they must leave at once. The young mother sobbed, clutching her child tightly, while the father stared into the night, rage and grief battling in his chest. They had only sought a home, yet found themselves in the middle of a war between the living and the dead. By dawn, their belongings were gathered. The compound gates were opened, and the family was escorted out, their faces shadowed by sorrow. Behind them, the people began a cleansing ritual, burning herbs, breaking the last of the charms, and sealing the ground with sacred words. Still, the whispers lingered. Some said the landlord should be cast out, punished for his silence. Others argued he had only been a prisoner of the curse, just like them. One thing, however, was certain: no child would ever again laugh or cry within those walls. The compound that had once been full of life now carried a silence that even the wind respected. This story reminds us, not every harsh rule is born from wickedness. Sometimes, what looks like cruelty hides a desperate act of care.